Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first online edition of Women in Engineering Days. Happy to have you all here. We are Marianne and Lieke, and we are your hosts of today.
Yes, and we organize these Women in Engineering Days because we have some very talented female engineers working for ING, and they would love to share their story with you. So the upcoming 4 days, you can enjoy inspiring talks, talks about technical topics, but also personal stories about diversity and leadership. And today we have 2 talks. First talk will start at, very soon, in a couple of minutes. And the second talk will start at 12:30. And the topics for today are AI is not the future yet by Maike Fischer and Diversity in Leadership by Harita and Renee.
Some practical information. Every talk will take about 45 minutes, including a Q&A at the end of every talk. If you have questions, please ask them in the comment box on the right. Be aware that there is a 20-second delay between the live streaming and YouTube. And we will have a small break in between the 2 talks after the talk of Maike. So stay tuned. We are now in Amsterdam. The weather is not that good. It's raining. It's a little bit cold outside, but we are very excited and looking forward to today and the days after today. So
yes,
enjoy.
Yeah, and I would like to hand over to the screen to Maike Fischer. She will introduce herself shortly, but just fun fact about Maike, she's a true foodie. It doesn't matter where she goes, but eating out or cooking at home, she loves both. So Maike, take it away. It's your time to shine.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I assume that I'm live now. Also, a very warm welcome from me to the Women in Engineering Days of ING this week. I'm super honored that I can open the week with my talk today. And yeah, without further ado, I would like to get started. So I would like to introduce myself, of course. So who am I? I am, as already announced by Lieke and Mariam, I'm Maike. I'm from Germany originally, but I live in the Netherlands already for 8 years. So the Netherlands kind of feels like home to me already. And right now I live in Amsterdam. And I have a Master of Science in Data Science, and I completed that degree about 2 years ago. Before I started at ING as a machine learning engineer. And I worked as a machine learning engineer for about 2 years. So basically all my time at ING, I was involved in data science projects. I was building machine learning models, but I was also helping to productionize these models and bring them to production. Right now, I just started in a new team at ING, and I work as a software engineer. In particular on the back-end side, we do a lot of DevOps work in that field. And yeah, I really, really enjoy ING as my employer over the past 2 years. And I'm having a really good time. Now, when it comes to my private life, I really like to balance my work, sitting at the computer all day, programming, with sports. So going out, moving, being active, and of course, traveling. Who doesn't like that? And like Lieke already announced, I love cooking and I love food. And that's where I spend way too much money, if I'm honest. I'm really happy that I can present at this, or I also partially organize this event today about women in engineering, because often in the work floor, I noticed that there are actually not really a lot of female colleagues that I have, and I find it always a bit of a shame. And I think we really need to invest more of our time to spread the word that this is also a really cool profession for females, for women, and I would love to see more female engineers in the future as my colleagues. Now, let's get started with the talk. I want to open the talk right away with my key message, and was also the title of my presentation, and that is that AI is not the future yet, and why you need DevOps and software engineering skills to make it a success. So this is what I'm trying to convey to you today in my talk. So let's get started. I want to first introduce the principle of DevOps, because maybe not everyone is aware what it means. So this is how we deliver software in modern IT organizations. And also at ING, we work DevOps. So it's basically consists of two parts. We have the dev part, the development part. This is where we build new features. We maybe have to fix some bugs in our code. We really want to make frequent changes very often, and we are operating in a dynamic environment. Now, on the other side of the equation, you have ops, and ops stands for operations, and it's just a little bit the opposite of the development work, because operations is about keeping things reliable and stable, and that is a bit contradictory to all the dynamics that we bring in when we want to make a lot of changes often. And yeah, when it comes to DevOps, we try to make these changes small, incremental, and often, so that we can bring value to customers very, very quickly. And what we do in my team is that we try to automate all these steps, all these different steps that you see in this pipeline. So the coding, the building, the testing, the releasing, we try to automate it so that we have as little human intervention as possible when we work DevOps. Now, second important component of this presentation is, of course, AI. And that stands for artificial intelligence. And it's a little bit of a buzzword, I think. So when I Googled AI, this was actually the picture that I found on Google first thing. So I had to fill the slide somehow, so I included it. But it's not really nice, I think. You imagine like robots with near human intelligence, I don't know, taking over the world eventually. That's not really what is practiced in the industry at the moment. So in what we do in the industry is we work with machine learning, and that essentially is just an enabler of artificial intelligence in the end. But yeah, we build models that we train on data sets that are representative of certain population, and we fit a function or a model to that data set, and we try by introducing a new unseen data point to predict a certain target value. So this could be, for example, given a picture, the model will predict whether you have a dog or a cat on the picture. It's just a very simple example. So now that is just one example of machine learning. There's way more to it. So you have probably heard about deep learning and reinforcement learning, but I will leave that out of scope for now. Now, at the end of the day, these machine learning models, they are small computer programs. So machine learning in itself is actually just software. So what do I think is the problem here? Now, what I've seen over the past 2 years is that you have a data scientist, which is pictured here on the left side of the slide, and she's innovating and she's trying to solve a particular business problem using data, building cool machine learning models. Once she has found a solution, she will, well, you actually want to bring this to production somehow, if the solution is great. Now, what usually happens is this code will be sort of thrown over a wall, imaginary wall, to the software engineer who is here on the right side. And now he has the task to implement this model into production. But maybe this guy works in a more traditional company, more older corporate environment. Maybe he doesn't even know Python as a programming language, and that is usually the programming language that the data scientist uses. Maybe in the worst case scenario, the code is being passed to the software engineer in a Jupyter notebook, so in sort of like a runtime environment for your browser for some Python code. And there, the handover there's like a big friction between that. So it becomes a very big challenge for him to take that on, because he doesn't necessarily have the knowledge, because she is the expert and she has written that code. Now, this is the guy who's trying to figure the code out and trying to make it work. Well, good luck with that. It's going to take you very, very, very long time to get that handover and bring this very big feature into production. And this is why most of the time, this is one of the many, many reasons why most of the time it takes very long for machine learning models to go to production. And it's a lot of effort involved from the data scientists, but also from the software engineers to make it work. So we see there is a certain dilemma here. And by the way, if you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. I will address them at the end of the presentation. Now, I would like to talk a bit about DevOps for machine learning, because this is something that I have learned over the past 2 years, and I've learned many valuable lessons from, I think. And I will try to go through every DevOps lifecycle stage, so the little curve that we saw, and try to bring it into the context of machine learning models and how we can apply some principles from the software engineering domain for machine learning models. Now, it also, of course, depends a bit on where you work and how you work, but this is sort of my experience so far, so I hope that can be of value. Now, in the very beginning of the DevOps lifecycle, you always have the planning phase. So before you start coding on anything, you first of all have to plan something. And I wasn't really sure whether I should put it in the presentation at all, because what can it be different from, the regular software delivery process here when we're talking about machine learning models? Well, actually, there is quite a big difference, because with regular features within the regular software engineering domain, you usually know in your planning phase, well, we have to do A, then we have to do B, and then we have to do C, and then the story is complete and the solution looks like Z. Well, when it comes to building machine learning models, there's so much experimentation involved in that process, because most of the time you know what is the problem, but you don't know how to get to the solution unless you experiment with different models and you try out different things. Now, that goes sort of hand in hand with the next point, is that because it's a different process, you might not want to use the regular tools that you have, so the storyboard or defining some task and then you complete them, because you're going back and forth so much. But I would recommend to try to still stick to it, because it really helps you to in the model development to keep track of what you've already tried. Other people from your team know what you're doing, and it shows that you're making progress. So I would recommend on doing that. The second thing is that what helped us a lot in the past is, well, I worked on 2 projects, and one we didn't do it and the other we did, is to set concrete milestones or goals. So let's say you set a milestone every 4 weeks or a goal every 4 weeks by and by then you want to have certain tasks achieved. And that really helps to prove your stakeholders that even though you're experimenting a lot and nothing is in production yet, and you're basically not delivering any business value at all, they're just paying you to experiment, that you're still making progress, and you can pitch to them what you have tried and what is working and what is not working. And now my most important point is think minimal viable model. So there's something very similar, I think, in the engineering domain. This is the MVP, the minimal viable product. So think core functionality first. Think what is the minimum performance we want to achieve with the machine learning model, and then put that in production. Unless you have put it in production and you have generated some business value, don't continue with experimenting, but really see it as a small step and bring that to production first. I think it's super, super important. Now, the second part, when it comes to code, I think there is a lot to learn from the software engineering domain, but those, I think, are really my main points and really the key enablers that helped us to move to production fast in the past. So once you know what kind of model you want to build, and you're sort of reaching the end of your first MVM, so minimal viable model, start designing your system. Think about, okay, how do we want this model to interact with other systems? Because usually you have your machine learning model, but you also have some other applications that want to use that model, and there's some more business logic going on in those applications. So design your system. Have a look at how your company is building other applications. Are they maybe going microservice strategy? Then think about, okay, then maybe you should also deploy your model as a microservice that has its own purpose and that is only to make predictions about something. Depends a bit on the context, but I think start designing it as a whole system. How do you want it to interact with others? Then it's really important to also think about, are we going to deploy this in batch or in real time? So do you need real-time predictions on demand or on request all the time? Or is it sufficient to run the model every night at 10 p.m. and in the morning, some business applications start using the predictions and read them from a table, for example? Now, the third point is also really important. It's about the API of your model, so the application programming interface. So how do other systems communicate with your model? How do they get to the predictions? What's the way of communicating with your model? This could be, in most, I guess, systems nowadays, RESTful endpoints are really, really popular. So it could be via HTTPS, request response basis. Well, I've seen other applications where streaming was quite useful. So they wrote a Kafka producer in the model application. So the model puts the predictions on a Kafka event bus, and then other systems can read the predictions from the event bus. So yeah, basically just how do you want to act with your model? What's your means of communication? And last point is testing. And I thought, if you're an engineer on this call, you probably think, why is she even pointing that out? But I've seen a lot of machine learning code in the past, and it's not well tested. So really put the time into writing proper unit tests, integration tests, functional tests. It goes on and on and on. You have so much to test. Invest your time there, because it will save you so much work later when you end up with bugs on bugs on bugs. Now that we have our model API written and ready to go, we need to talk about continuous integration. And this is the second next or the third next step within the DevOps pipeline. And if you have ever built software for millions of customers in several countries for a worldwide renowned bank like ING, you don't want to be the guy that is standing there like this when you click merge and your code is being deployed to production. Sort of like, oh, I hope it works. You don't. You want to be very, very sure that the changes that you're introducing in your systems, they don't break anything, that everything is still working. And continuous integration helps with that. So let me break that down a little bit further and explain how this would work in the case of a machine learning model. So continuous integration has two stages. And the first stage is the build stage, and the second stage is the test stage. And these stages are executed in an automated fashion. So just taking an example, most of the continuous integration is actually done with commit-triggered pipelines. So now it's a bit of a mouthful. It's actually really easy to understand. So just imagine a pipeline that triggers two different stages, which is build and which is test. So commit triggered means that you trigger this pipeline on a certain commit in Git. So that would be, for example, you merge a change to master, because usually if you merge a change to master, that means you think or you want to have this in production, you want to have this on the master branch. So every time you make a merge request to master and it's reviewed and it's approved by one of your colleagues, then this pipeline will be triggered once the merge is complete. And what happens is, first we will trigger a build of the machine learning model. So the build basically just compiles your code and creates a deployable version of the model, which is also called, for example, an artifact. And that is then the most recent version of your model. Now, against this build, against this compiled package that we now have, we will run the tests. So in that way, we make sure that whenever you make a change and you merge it to master, nothing has been broken. And here you also know, well, in order to run tests, you need to have good tests. So that's why I mentioned them also in the code phase. It's really important that you have written good tests. And now, if everything succeeds, you get a green check mark and you're ready to go to the next stage, which is very similar, continuous deployment. So within continuous deployment, we will, there's another two steps that will be triggered upon the successful completion of continuous integration. And that's the release stage and the deploy stage. And here it's important to understand that the build that you made in the continuous integration stage will be released to your repository. So you can see this sort of as an archive for all your previous machine learning models. And your newest model will be released there with this corresponding version, and it will just reside there ready to be deployed. Now, the next stage would be, we will take this version and deploy it on our, depends on the setup of your company, of course, but usually have sort of a staging environment, a test environment where you want to deploy first. And then once maybe you need to sign off, maybe you want to test it on the test environment before you release it to production. And upon the successful completion of that, you want to release it to production. Well, and then your machine learning model would be live. And it would go live on every change that you're making. And there we see it's so nice that we have this automated process in this pipeline, because there's very little manual labor that we have to do. And it's very, if it's executed well, you have it also very stable and very reliable. And that is what the operation part of the DevOps lifecycle is for. Now, the fifth stage of the DevOps lifecycle is the operating stage. And I thought, okay, this is very, very interesting in the machine learning domain, because compared to regular software, machine learning models can go stale. Whereas in regular software, you have a business logic and you program that, sort of like a ruling. And unless that logic changes, your model will always, your code will always still work. But when it comes to machine learning models, the model can go stale, because what if the input data changes all of a sudden, or the model itself changes? So if something in the human nature of us changes in our behavior, and we start to naturally the model doesn't fit anymore, the function has changed. And I will go into this a little bit later when I talk about monitoring again. But this is really important to keep in mind when you want to have machine learning in production. It's way more effort to operate. And that goes sort of hand in hand with deciding on your retraining strategy. So you need to think about, so how do we want to operate this? Because a machine learning model at one point will need to have retraining. That means that you need to update your model on the most recent data set, and you need to retrain it, and then you need to deploy it again. So you have to decide together with your team on how you want to do that and who is responsible for what. And I think the monitoring part later will really enable that, to be able to spot on when to retrain. But it's good to have certain agreements with your team on who is responsible for what. And what works best is if you try to create team ownership for machine learning models. So it's not that just because the data scientist developed this model, that everyone else of the team doesn't know what's going on and they don't care, because this is software that you operate in production, and you should have the team ownership there. It's not that this originated on an island and nobody knows and cares about it. No, the key here is to create the team ownership and make sure that everyone cares that this works and that this model performs. Now, coming to the last stage before we go back into the planning phase and the curve is sort of closed, monitoring. So there's an additional monitoring part to machine learning that we don't have for regular software engineering. So it's functional monitoring. And that's something that I already tried to introduce in the previous slide. So we need to functionally model whether we have any changes in the data distribution. So we trained our model on a data set that was fixed. And now we are feeding the model data in production. Now, these two data sets need to remain similar. Otherwise, the model will be fed wrong input, right? The model will be fed data that is not meant for it. So if you look at data distributions, you want to make sure that these distributions of the both data sets, that they are very similar to each other and that they don't drift apart from each other, because this is really a sign for you need to update the model and you need to retrain it on a new data set. Now, changes within the model could be that, for example, when we take let's take the first example. We have a model that predicts whether a picture, on a picture there is cats or dogs. Now, let's say we start breeding cats and dogs. Doesn't make any sense, but then, something concretely in the model changes where all of a sudden maybe a dog has some cat ears and I don't know, a cat has some dog features in its face. And then the model doesn't even make sense anymore, just because the humans decided that they want to change it all of a sudden. But it's very reasonable in other cases to occur because, we live in a dynamic world. And you cannot rely on your team constantly monitoring your systems, right? So you need to set up alerts because nobody has time to watch a monitoring screen the whole day. And that's something that we do already in software engineering. Like by default, we always have alerting set up for systems that are in production, but most of the time on the non-functional monitoring side. So this is something we call technical monitoring. This is just for system health. So we would monitor the response codes of our endpoints. We would monitor the load on our applications. We would monitor maybe the GPU and CPU usage. It really depends, but there's so much that you can technically monitor on your on regular software. Why don't we just also monitor our machine learning API or our model API? It does make sense to me because let's say during peak business hours, all of a sudden, there's no traffic anymore to your machine learning model. That means that something is going wrong, and you want to be alerted for that. You want to be sure that you are aware that something is going wrong so that you can take actions to fix it. Now, I'm coming sort of to the end now of my presentation. So we completed basically the whole DevOps lifecycle, and we sort of took a machine learning approach to it. So how can we make this work for machine learning projects? And one key component that I noticed over the past 2 years is that, within ING, we work in multidisciplinary squads. So that means that we have a product owner from the business side. We have a customer journey from the expert from the business side. We have front-end developers, we have back-end developers, we have ops engineers. Sometimes we have UX designers in our squad as well. And why don't we add the data scientist or the data analyst to our team as well? Why does she need to operate on her own island and sit on her own table? She should sit with us together at the table. She should be participating in our stand-ups, and she should also be participating in the planning and in the retro. So depending whether you work Scrum or not, of course, but this person needs to be part of the team. She's developing a software component for us, a new feature essentially, probably a big feature, but you get the idea. And this works really, really, really well, I think, because then you have a domain expert from every domain that you need, and that's really great. So now that you heard all my content, I hope that I was able to convince you a little bit that AI is not the future yet, and that we really need DevOps and software engineering skills in that domain to make it a success. And we're coming to questions. This went really fast.
Yeah.
Maybe I was talking really fast.
Very exciting talk as well.
Mariam,
I think you went well. Yeah, there are 2 questions until now. What are good ways to detect whether a model is going stale? From Julianne.
Okay, so the first one would be I would monitor the data distributions. So you monitor the data that is going into your model over time, and you compare these distributions. So I don't know if you remember from maybe your statistics class a couple of years ago, you can plot data on a distribution curve, and then you get a curve like this. This would be the normal distribution, but you can do that for so many data sets. You can do this on a daily basis, basically. And you can statistically assert whether the data set from last week is significantly different than the data set from this week. So then you know exactly that, okay, if they are really, really different from each other, maybe we should retrain the model because now something has changed in our data distribution and we need to update the model. The second part would be, and this is, I think in practice is a bit more challenging to do. monitoring the performance metrics of your model. So in machine learning, we have usually performance metrics that we want to optimize for. So for example, accuracy is a very popular metric to use. So what you would do is you compare the predictions that you made with your model to the actual truth of, what is the actual truth of the target value. So for example, when we take this example again of having a picture of predicting a cat or a dog, you would first let the model predict, so is this a cat or a dog on the picture? And then later on, you would say, okay, you would count the number of times that the model has been wrong or right, because you know the truth, you're a human, you can correct the model. But of course, this is a little bit more challenging in production, especially when you make a prediction, but you don't necessarily have the feedback from the customer or from the real world. What is the real truth here? So it's a bit more challenging, and maybe you would have to engineer a feedback loop around it so that maybe customers can somehow tell you what is the real truth here if you interact with customers. It's just an example. So this is, two ways of doing it.
Okay, perfect. One more question from Julianne after the other question. Except for streaming applications, why would you want to have your model embedded in your application rather than as a separate API?
I think, I would definitely agree with you on having it always run as a service, because it has its own purpose and its own business process, sort of, that it's responsible for. So just making predictions about a specific topic. But I can imagine that when you work for a really small company, that maybe you don't have this kind of microservice architecture because it doesn't make any sense yet. Maybe it's too expensive to operate all these microservices, and you just have, 5 developers in a company. Then maybe it makes more sense to just implement it right away in the system or in your backend system. That could be one use case that I could think of. While in the corporate environment, I don't think we would do that. I hope that answers the question.
I hope so too. Thank you. And then, till now, the last question from Rosa Maria. So there are two questions embedded in one question. So I'll read it out loud. In machine learning, Git really helps to keep track of your model, but how do you keep track of the data linked to that model?
Yeah.
Do you push it to Git as well, or do you store that data in a different repo/location?
Yeah, that is something, of course, more challenging. Okay, we don't push data to Git ever. That's just our way of working, and that ensures that we as a bank operate in a compliant way. We don't want to have any sort of data in our source control systems. But I do agree with you that you need to somehow track on what version of the data that you trained your model, because then you have the back traceability. You know exactly how the model was trained. So I think, what we have done in the past, because technically we did not have this infrastructure yet, is that, we thought, okay, how can we most simply do that? So what we did is we made separate tables in our database, and we said, okay, this is the data set that we trained model version 1.23 with. This is just an example. This could be easy, but of course it's nothing compared to Git, and if you really want to make that work, then you need to have like proper data pipelines engineered, and that is way more effort to do. So depends a bit on the use case, but we were also not really there yet when it comes to data versioning, but we just try to be creative and make it work for us, so that we, for us, can at least track it as good as possible. I hope it answers the question a little bit, Rosa.
Are there any other questions, dear attendees? Anything else, Maike, you would like to add to your story?
Well, if there are no more questions, then I would say we can close it off here, because I think I'm right on time, a little bit early, maybe a few minutes.
Perfect. Well done, Maike.
So very good timing. I was a little bit afraid that I would not would not manage that very well, but I want to thank everyone that attended. I hope it was interesting, and yeah, please connect to me on LinkedIn. And if you are looking to work as a software engineer with an ING, we often have vacancies open. So please have a look and join us. I would love to have even more female colleagues on the work floor, and it's really awesome to work at ING. I can only highly recommend it. So yeah.
I have one question coming up.
Okay.
Shall I read it out?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the toolset/technology being used to support the described dev and ops stages? For example, Jupyter as a service, Git, Kubernetes.
Yeah, so I wouldn't put a Jupyter anywhere in that cycle, maybe in code, but I think in the actual DevOps lifecycle, in the code stage, you include a source control. So Git, I think, is really the market standard here. Well, you have several different versions of Git, whether you use GitHub or GitLab, it doesn't matter. Well, for the build, you need build servers. So Jenkins is a really, really popular tool. When it comes, build server that can also automate your testing, can automate a lot of stuff actually. When it comes to your release pipeline, there's, for example, Ansible, but a lot of the public cloud providers, they actually have, basically for every stage, they already have tooling integrated. So what I was just describing, they are like separate tools. Whereas, for example, if you onboard on Microsoft Azure, then you will get your own code repository. You will get Microsoft Azure DevOps that will help you with your builds and will help you with your release process and also with your deployments. So it depends. Either you plug and play and you use different technologies that are sort of standalone on the market, or you go for, I don't know, a public cloud provider and you purchase the whole package. And then you have everything integrated, and it's actually, pretty easy to get something off the ground really quickly. And then it also doesn't matter whether you want to deploy in data centers or you want to deploy Docker containers on a container hosting platform like Kubernetes. Yeah, it really depends on your company and your use case. On maybe it's your hobby project, and you're even more flexible. So yeah.
Perfect.
So many.
You're just perfect on time. It's 12:15 now. I would like to thank you all for your attention. This talk is recorded, so you can watch it again via our YouTube channel. We have now a short break until 12:30, and then we will be back with our second talk about something different, something non-technical, diversity in leadership, by Haritha and Renee. And Renee is a male colleague. So very excited to that, and hopefully we see you back in a few minutes, 15 minutes. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank Maike.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. And welcome for everyone who just joined this talk. Welcome to our first edition of the Women in Engineering Days. Great to have you all here. Some practical information. We will start with our talk soon by Haritha and Renee, and this talk will be approximately 45 minutes, including a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions for them, please answer your question in the comment box, and they will answer them after the talk. Be aware that there's a 20-second delay between the live streaming and YouTube. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we are ready to introduce our second talk, Diversity in Leadership by Harita and Renee. Inside information good to know about Harita is that she loves playing basketball, reading, cooking, and painting in oils. Really pretty, just to mention. And Renee is married, sorry ladies, and has 3 kids and 4 cats. The floor is yours.
Very much, and welcome everybody. I'm happy that you joined us today in our talk about diversity and leadership. We would like to share with you what, in our opinion, makes teams, and especially diverse teams, successful. A bit about myself. Again, René van Putten, I work for ING for over 30 years now, and the last 7 years I was a manager. I'm responsible for backend engineers at MOA. I have teams in the Netherlands, Belgium, and India. I'm committed to diversity in teams. I never had the ambition, though, to become a manager, until at some point I realized that's not entirely fair. I did have the idea that managers in general often don't have the idea of what they're actually doing. But at some point in time, I really realized I should put my money where my mouth is and prove it myself. So when the opportunity came along, I decided I step in and I'll see for myself. And to be honest, I was right. In general, managers had no idea what they were doing, and all of a sudden that included me as well. That was quite a bummer. However, what I was doing with my teams somehow did make sense. As the teams delivered, my people were quite happy and were eager for new challenges. So that really made me wonder what makes that what I do or what we do as a group actually works. If by the end of the talk, all you remember is diversity is worth the effort and it's all about wetware or human beings, I'm already happy. So I hope I will be able to convey that message. When I said yes to this talk, initially I had no clue what to tell you. Diversity for me has always been a starting point. It's never been a question whether I should do it or not. The first person I hired when I became a manager was the one that was to replace me in my current position back then, was a Chinese woman. The next one was a very young Dutch guy, and then came someone from Serbia, Romania, and Ukraine. So diversity was already a challenge for myself as of day one. Currently, a few days later, my team consists of 10 chapter leads and me. I have 2 women and 9 males. Yes, that's indeed a bit off balance. I have 6 nationalities, from Chinese, Palestinian, Dutch, Poland, India, and Belgium. Half of my team is not Dutch, and Generation X and Y are roughly equally represented. First, a little of a disclaimer. Today, what I'm going to tell you is my story. It's about my steps from being an unconscious, incompetent manager to at least a somewhat conscious, competent guy in managing people. But I was still wondering, what does it take for teams to be effective and why? Today, I will tell you my opinion about things I've experienced, about things I've read about, and it's my understanding, in my own words, on how things work. I hope the terms I use will make sense to you as well. However, it's not scientific research, and you can't use it as a guaranteed roadmap for success. But of course, if you have any feedback, if you want to learn and share, please do so. Let's first have a look at diversity in nature. Nature encourages diversity, and diversity increases our chances to survive. A homogeneous group of animals or human beings is way more vulnerable for environmental changes, especially if changes come fast. And of course, in evolution, fast is relative. It can be anything less than a few hundred generations. And these environmental changes can also be anything. It can be ice age. It can be migration, people from the countryside to the cities, but it also can be the arrival of new diseases. COVID-19, for instance, is an obvious example. Our diversity in genes makes that some of us hardly see something or feel something from corona, while others really become very sick, end up at ICU units, or might even not survive. So again, from a nature perspective, diversity is good for survival. For human beings, however, diversity is also counterintuitive, because we as human beings tend to connect to those who are similar to ourselves, who are part of our group. That's also how we have been programmed by nature, because being part of a group also increases our chances to survive. This means, however, that diversity in teams is a deliberate choice. It doesn't happen by accident. And looking back on the people I hired, yes, I'm also affected by the affinity bias. There is one characteristic I see all my team members have in common. I'll get back to it later, but for now, you may guess. What does the dictionary say about diversity? It's the fact of many different types of things or people being included in something, a range of different things or people. Now, why, as a manager, would you want many different things or people in your team? I'm convinced that diversity is good. However, communication is hard, and managing is all about communication. Communication to a group is even harder, and communication to a diverse group is even harder. It becomes exponentially more difficult when your group size increases. So, as a manager, you want to keep your group size small. So how to balance between those two? First again, diversity might bring challenges, but first of all, it's fun. You can enjoy it. It's lovely to see the differences between people. It colors literally your life. Let's have a look at some data, because engineers love data in general, right? We know from research that diversity improves your team, and decision-making by diverse teams outperforms that of individuals 87% of the time. Next to that, research had it that diverse organizations outperform their competitors by 35%. Those are serious numbers. Now, as an engineer, you probably also know that you should not run big projects. You should run projects with small steps in a steady pace. We know things will change along the way. We know we will be wrong on assumptions and expectations, and that's fine. However, we do need to prevent to make the most harmful mistakes. Given the many biases human beings have, decisions can be better made by a group than on your own. But as stated before, big groups or even bigger groups won't work in decision making. What you can see, however, is that if you're able to create a diverse team, that diversity in your team is an equivalent for big numbers. Through diversity, you get more different ideas and insights to help you to prevent harmful mistakes. And that diversity in your team can come from cultural background, it can come from age, and for someone's perspective on life in general. And no, I didn't mention gender on my list. But on the other hand, men come from Mars, women come from Venus, and gender neutrals come from the sun. So it's inevitable that if you put gender diversity in the mix, you will have people with a lot of different perspectives to life on Earth. So to increase diversity, gender diversity is a very good first step. Now, if you have a team, or even a diverse team preferably, what does it take to make that group effective? Google did quite some research about that. And I will mention two projects here. First, Project Aristotle, done by Google in 2012 and published in the New York Times. You can Google about it and find the original article as well. In Project Aristotle, they found out that effective teams have 5 characteristics. They score very well on psychological safety, which means, does everyone feel safe to state his opinion or to disagree? They score high on dependability, which means the team members can count on each other to meet expectations and a high bar of quality. They score high on structure and clarity, which means the responsibilities and the objectives are clear for everyone. They score high on meaning, and meaning is to what extent is the objective in the team also meaning for you as an individual. And they score well on impact, the sheer size of the effect of what they want to do. The second project by Google is Project Oxygen. There they investigated what are the qualities a good leader should have. And they came at 10 good qualities. I won't mention them all, but next to being a good coach and having collaborative skills, it's about empowering teams, avoid micromanaging, create an inclusive team environment, and focus on productive behavior and results. However, if you look at the projects by Google, the things that makes team effective and what makes a manager effective. Is that all? Well, it helps, of course, to have the recipe of a good cake. However, if you want to win the Great British Bake Off and you want to create heavenly caramel chocolate brownies, then you also need to understand how the ingredients all work into the mix. Last year, I stumbled upon 2 topics that really took my interest and at least partially explain why actually these kind of things help, why those team characteristics work, and why a manager should or should not do certain behavior. And those 2 things are holding space and SCARF. And we'll dive a bit into those now. Holding space. I don't know exactly where it comes from, and if you're familiar with mindfulness, you might have run into them as well. It's not something you do for yourself, but it's something you do for someone else. Heather Platt, who published quite a lot about it, describes it as follows. Holding space means that you are willing to walk alongside another person in whatever their journey they're on, without judging them, making them feel inadequate, trying to fix them, or trying to impact the outcome. When we hold space for other people, we open our hearts, offer unconditional support, and let go of judgment and control. That open our hearts part is a bit too sentimental for me, but for the rest, holding space is something I do on a daily basis. And most of you do. If you have children, you will hold space for them. If you have relatives to take care of, you will hold space for them. In a work situation, however, we also hold space for the people we work with, and it helps to be more aware of that. The SCARF model is something completely different. The SCARF model is based on neurological explanations on why things work, while other things create a lot of resistance. It comes from neuroscientific research, and it implies that we have 5 social domains in our brain that activate the same threat and reward responses as we rely on for physical survival. The 5 key domains heavily influence our behavior in social situations. The domains are status, which is our social position in relation to others. Certainty, our ability to predict the outcome. Autonomy, our sense of control over our destiny. Relatedness, the question, are we part of the in-group, yes or no? And fairness, are we or others being treated in a just way? When people in social situations feel threatened, and it can be a very tiny bit, a threat response will follow. And that can be anything like resistance, denial, and anger. And it will be anything but collaboration. While activating a reward response will improve collaboration. Knowing these drivers enables us to design interactions which minimize threats. If you know as a manager that lack of autonomy activates genuine threat response, then you should consciously avoid micromanaging. Knowing that reward responses are possible, you can tap into the internal reward system of people, which basically means use intrinsic motivation. That works way better than money. In marketing and in entertainment, they already use these kind of things since ages. We, in our normal work as a manager, should do more consciously as well. But beware, rewards and threats indeed are not equal in value. Threat responses are more powerful. We move away from threats way more quickly and way more vigorously than we move towards responses. And given our brain's disproportionate response to perceived social threats implies that we as managers must take great pains to avoid them. I would like now to go over the 5 and see how it matches to our daily work within the team. First, what we try to do is to make sure that all team members are able to make contributions and add value to the team as a whole. And Scarf made me realize that this allows them status. And now status sounds very alpha male-like, but it has nothing to do with power. It's all about recognizing and accepting contributions by other team members. Status means that the individual matters. And of course, some contributions at some point in time are more important than others. But in the end, again, you need them all for the heavenly chocolate caramel brownies. The second one was certainty. Within the team, we try to be transparent on what we know and what we don't know about the future. We discuss all those things together, and that allows us to anticipate for the most likely opportunities and risks. It indeed creates a certain level of certainty. Even challenging topics like scaling down on headcount, but also outsourcing, which can be considered a threat to someone individual, we discuss together. And in the end, it will bring us better decisions and, way more important, more sustainable implementations. Because it's something we do as a group and not something that someone does as an individual and pushing it upon others. These days, a lot of things are out of our control. Control is an illusion, if it was up to me. However, at the same time, we also see there is way more room to make your own choices than you might think. Of course, you can ask your manager what you should do next. However, you can also ask your manager for validation. For instance, you can say, given this objective and given these circumstances, I think we should do that. Is that okay? Or do you think I missed something crucial? I highly encourage the second approach. In order to do that, I try to set clear boundaries, share context of what we want to achieve and why. And to me, that's what autonomy is about. I try to be open about my mistakes. A few years ago, I took a management survey of Google and asked anonymously all my managers at that point in time how they looked at me. I openly then discussed the results with them. I showed the responses on the board and asked them, how should I interpret this? And what can I change in order to improve the performance of our team? Doing this really helped to create the group and to confirm that all meanings matter and that indeed we are a group. If some decision of one of the team members or myself turns out wrong, we don't discuss the failure. It's not about the fact that it failed. Way more important is to discuss the assumptions we had, to discuss the context, to discuss the circumstances and the expectations that drove the choice we made. I believe that's a prerequisite for a psychological safe work environment. And this directly links into relatedness. And it's good to realize that safe, the meaning of safe, is different for everyone. It highly depends on, for instance, culture and personal experience. And I think you should create a safe environment by example. Holding space is also very much about keeping things safe, non-judging, not trying to fix someone else. Finally, we try to treat people fairly. And note my words, fairly, not the same. Because the same means you don't take into account the individual differences. And again, a note, all things are relative. Just what's fair to me might not be fair to you. And the same again counts for status, certainty, relatedness. Those are not absolute values. Knowing the emotional domains, all of a sudden, to me at least, the results from the Google project made more sense. Many, if not all, of the things they found on what it takes to be a good manager, or what are the characteristics of highly effective teams, can be directly linked to the 5 emotional domains. I would invite you to have a look at it yourself. And maybe we're not that rational human beings after all. And again, a warning. Our brains are highly sensitive to threats in any situations. Our senses are highly optimized to recognize even the smallest signals of danger. We notice, and very often unconsciously, when something being said or done is not truly honest. So I believe, for instance, that you cannot fake any belief in diversity. Small things that you say or do will prove you don't. And others will read those signs. That might be one of the reasons why, for instance, setting numbers on women in management don't necessarily work out that well. Remember, I initially said, if you want to start with diversity, using gender diversity is a very good first step. That still stands. Yes, I think I have a very diverse team. However, when I look back, I also see that all my team members have one thing in common. All have compassion. Compassion enables us to take emotional state and impact into consideration in how we manage people. Now, is managing a diverse team different from managing a homogeneous team? Yes, I think it is. However, the same basic principles still apply. An increased diversity in your team also means an increased diversity in opinions and emotional triggers. And that requires additional effort from everyone in the team. I've had several meetings where people got frustrated because we couldn't agree on something, even after a 2-hour debate. And after the 3rd meeting, when we finally agreed, people were saying, hey, wasn't it possible to do this more efficient? Yeah, maybe you can do it more efficient. However, the value is in the discussion itself, because the value is what makes you a team, and the time that it takes helps you to ensure that you trigger emotional rewards instead of emotional threats. Finally, we're all human beings. Emotional threats and rewards in social situations is what we react upon, and there's nothing we can change. That's how it works. They heavily influence our behavior. For any team, and maybe a bit more for diverse teams. When you take the design of our hardware, our brain, into account, and you take the right level of compassion and patience, I believe you can outperform individuals in decision making, and you can outperform your competitors. In return, you have a lovely journey you can enjoy. This is for my part. I'd like now to pass on to Harita. Thank you very much.
Harita, it looks like your sound is not working currently.
Okay.
It's still not working well. There's a bit of echo.
Is there an echo? What about? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay and it looks like you're a robot. So I don't... Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Maybe try to not use the pods. Maybe that works.
Can you hear me now?
It's still the same.
It's still the same. But
Maybe.
it's not. Okay. 1 second.
So we wait for Harita to join again.
Yeah, that's maybe better. Yeah.
Sorry for the inconvenience.
Things happen. Okay, she will join us in a few minutes.
Maybe, Renee, are you still here?
Yeah, we have a few questions. Maybe that will help too.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Let's start answering some questions already. Or maybe let's check if it works now for Harita.
Yeah.
Does it work?
Yeah, perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Q&A will come later.
Yeah,
perfect.
perfect.
Okay, then I will.
The floor is yours.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for being late. My name is Harita. I'm originally from India. I've been living in the Netherlands for about 5 years now. I joined ING 1.5 years ago as IT chapter lead. My job involves people management, project management, and technology. And I love it. And I love it because it gives me a lot of energy. I am someone who loves new challenges. I try and learn simple things every single day, and I try to be a better person every day. In my free time, I read. I love art. As you can see,
Can you add
do a
your
lot of
screen,
sports.
share your screen, Harita?
I am sharing my screen.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Yes.
It doesn't share at the moment.
Oh. Okay. It says I'm sharing.
Maybe quit sharing and try again.
Okay.
No, it's still not working.
Okay, maybe Renee can help me with the slides.
Yeah. We see the slides of Renee now.
Okay. Technical difficulties. Right? So as you can see, so I love doing a lot of sports. I love reading. Renee and I work together with 9 other chapter leads. And as Renee mentioned earlier, we have one thing in common, and that's compassion. And today I'm going to be talking about compassionate leadership. Great. Someone asked me a few months ago, what is the most effective lesson that I learned about leadership? And for me, the most effective lesson that I learned was the power of inspiration, to be able to inspire others to achieve shared objectives, and compassion. And I believe there are a few ways to achieve it. Clarity and vision. So being able to believe, being able to see what you're actually trying to achieve. Next, courage of your conviction, to be able to believe and explain others what is the objective that you want to achieve. Communication, to be able to effectively communicate with the people that you want to talk, the people you want to share your vision about. Vulnerability, putting yourself out there, taking that leap and showing vulnerability takes in a lot of courage and strength. I know it's not easy, but showing the real you shows authenticity, and that's very important. And care and act, showing to your people that you care and you actually act upon it. And advice to my 21-year-old self would be to be more compassionate. I wasn't particularly compassionate at the beginning of my career, and if it weren't for the learning of the meaning and value of compassion, it is likely that I wouldn't be where I am today. How can being compassionate change your career path, your business, and your life? Compassion is not just about being nice. It's about showing concern to the well-being of the other person. When you lead with compassion, you invest time into people, set them on a path towards success. You clear their obstacles if they have any. It's as simple as your employees coming to you and asking you a simple question, hey, can I take a day off? This kind of leadership strengthens and mentors others. It provides stability and psychological safety, the most real ingredients that you have in your work environment. It also encourages your employees to become better leaders themselves. And these are the real elements that people search for while searching for a job. Studies have shown that the greater the psychological safety, the higher is the motivation and the higher is the risk-taking capacity. And these are the things that you need for someone to be innovative. And you need those people in your team. Next slide, please. And next, please. Great. Okay, so unfortunately, when there's stress, compassion goes out of the window, right? So when you, your body and your mind wants to have familiar coping mechanisms, and you fail to sometimes think that you can be wrong and others can be right. You fail to sometimes think that there could be another solution to the problem that you're in. Sometimes you unwittingly hurt others, or you're disturbed, create a disturbance with your colleagues, and that could also, create negativity within the team. And to avoid that, you gotta be strong to acknowledge how you're feeling. And it could be as simple as going to your coworker, your colleague, and saying, "Hey, I'm in stress right now. Can you please help me out? Hey, I'm in stress right now. Can I get back to you in 1 or 2 days?" Please remember to acknowledge how you're feeling. Next, please. Remember to evolve. Change is happening everywhere, and that's okay. We will evolve whether you know it or not. Some people will embrace the change. Some people may feel that they're being forced upon, and some people actually come out of their comfort zone and really evolve themselves. And I think it's super exciting to create what you will become in the future as a leader, using these best practices to remain and stay connected and calm will create a cohesive team, one that's built on compassion, trust, and respect. And finally, the key takeaway for our talk is the right choice is always people. over process. If you give preference to process, you end up creating conveyor belts that are that produce mediocre results. So please do not forget to give preference to people over process. Thank you. I hope we're on time and we have 10 minutes for the questions. Thanks, Renee. I have no idea what happened with my presentation.
Sorry for the inconvenience, guys.
Yes, sorry.
The very first question I notice is by Maike. And she states, do you have any practical tips on how to build a diverse team? How can you recruit them? Well, good question. What I do when I search for people for my teams, I look for people who are different from me. And gender or a different cultural background really works. On the other hand, within our department, Harita does a lot of the recruitment. Harita, can you fill in anything else?
Yes, so for me, it's all about balancing the team that I currently have. So when I look for someone, of course, technical skills always matter, but also personality matters. So I don't care if he's an introvert or an extrovert, if she's an introvert or extrovert, age doesn't matter, gender doesn't matter. For me, what's important is if I'm able to balance this person in my team. So if, for example, if I have 5 males and 2 females, I would definitely vouch for hiring a female and try to balance the team, not necessarily that every time this works, I can find an amazing candidate who's a male, but that's also okay. But you get my point. It's always about balancing and not picking based on your choice. For me, it's always creating the right balance. And Renee also supports that.
Thank you. I hope this answers the question of Maike a bit. The second one I saw was by Julian. He states, you mentioned we all have biases. I definitely concur with that. Do you have day-to-day tips on how to stay more aware of those biases? Being aware that they are there is the first step. And of course, you can read a lot about biases, and quite some books have been written about them. I perfectly am a fan of Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and that really brings out a lot and explains a lot of what happens within people's minds. Yeah. Again, it starts with being aware, and for day-to-day, I don't have any additional tips. Maybe Harita has?
For me, it's all about, I like what Renee mentioned, it's all about being aware. It's not just about this situation, but any kind of situation in particular. I started to do this new exercise to stop, to not react immediately, to take a step back and reflect. So even if it is with what I'm thinking, I don't anymore jump into conclusions, which are familiar patterns to me. I'm stopping and I'm taking a step back and hearing it out again in my head and then reacting. And I think that will definitely help. It helps me. I hope it will help you if you practice it.
Indeed. A few years ago, we introduced the training Search Inside Yourself by Google at ING. And that training is also about delaying the moment from perceiving something and reacting on it. And that really can help you in this perspective. Next to the training, there is also a book about this topic, Search Inside Yourself. I see Niels Greep has a question. Are there any books that you have read on this subject? Tons of them. I'm sorry. The list is way too long to give you here. I'll try to share an article somewhere this week or next week on LinkedIn and at least state a few of the titles there. Would that be okay? I hope so. Any other questions? Let me scroll down. Someone asks, how do you tackle conflicts or misunderstanding caused by cultural differences? Did you encounter any so far? Harita, I leave this one to you first.
I can answer that. First of all, I mentioned earlier about creating how to react in a stressful situation. there's always a point where you can stop and let the other person know that you're not feeling okay, and you'll get back to that person, right? You don't have to immediately like respond. So for me, tackling conflicts is about, if you're really like in a situation like that, I would recommend you to talk to your manager, right? And if your manager is conflicting with you, then you talk to your manager's manager, right? Or your coworkers, and see if it's just you who has a problem or if it's everybody who's having a problem. Then you do it in a different way, right? If it's just you who has a problem, then you are the one who's supposed to resolve it with the person that you're conflicted with. I particularly didn't encounter any stressful situation. I'm very lucky in that case, but I know a lot of people who did. And like I mentioned earlier, it's all about dealing with what kind of situation you are in, and if it's just you who's facing it, and if it's just multiple people who's facing it, and then you take the right step. Again, watch out for the words that are coming out from your mouth. Even though it's not just you who made a mistake, it's always good to be compassionate about what you're talking, and let the right words come out. So that's my experience.
What I can add to that, yes, again, a book. There's a book called Culture Map, in which they describe how, on which level, which basic levels, that you see really big differences between cultures. And as in many things, it starts with being aware of what's going on. And that's also the case here. If you see conflict, ask yourself what is going on. Always assume that your own opinion might be wrong, and not necessarily wrong in the sense of an error, but wrong in the sense of way different than the perspective of someone else. And understanding that is the first step into solving any conflict, I think.
Yeah.
The final question I see is, did you apply some different ways to lead people who were from various different cultures? I didn't, I think. I, as far as I know, I don't make any difference between whether it's all Dutch or non-Dutch, or because I believe you should manage teams, again, with compassion and with understanding on how what I do as a manager influence their life directly and indirectly. Arita, anything to add?
Yeah, for me, leading is different, and then understanding where the person is coming from is different. So I would always have the same value and same ideas if I'm leading, for example, a group of 10 people. But if I have to make one-on-one connection with those people, then I would definitely make an effort to step into their shoes to see who they are, what they're coming, why they're saying what they're saying, where they're coming from. But for me, the common objective is really leading with compassion and really try to understand what they're trying to do and what we are all trying to achieve.
Nadia states that Culture Map is good. It helps me to understand people better. So it's not just us.
Yes.
Another question, how much you try to keep the balance of diversity, whether it's nationality, gender, whatever, during recruitment? Are there any guidelines within ING, or is it totally subjective to hiring managers? I'm afraid it's pretty subjective to the hiring manager. I'm not aware of any guidelines whatsoever.
No.
So
there are no objections that, okay, we shouldn't hire someone from Syria, for example. There's nothing like that in ING. It's all about what would fit that particular team and particular manager. So it's subjective to the hiring managers, indeed.
Yeah, the choice is yours.
Yes.
Any other questions? And yeah, it takes 20 seconds, sorry. If not, then I think it's time.
We're on time.
5 minutes.
Yes.
Right?
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Renee and Arita. Thank you.
Great talk.
Yes, so this is it for today. Thank you all for watching. Obviously, when we are live, technical issues can happen, but it worked out really well in the end. So I would like to thank our speakers again, Maike, Renee, and Arita for today. And the upcoming 3 days, we have some more inspiring talks for you, and you can check them out at our meetup page. We will share that in our comment box. And yeah, hopefully we will see you back again tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. See you tomorrow, hopefully.
Bye-bye.
Bye.